they can vote everything through, almost, right? So if you think about that, it's very difficult to introduce changes, good corporate governance practice, because the controlling shareholder is probably going to think that doesn't help me make money. I mean, it's just going to introduce costs, right? And they will not really warm up to those ideas. The list goes on and on. Shareholders don't vote. Okay, why is that the case? You know, in Hong Kong, and occasionally reporting season, right? You will see how some listed companies, when they hold their AGM, the shareholders do like to go because, you know, they serve them very good dim sum, right? And they have nice giveaways, right? So around that time, usually the financial press will report on what kind of food they're serving at the AGM, right? Hong Kong has a very funny shareholding system, which is called the semi-dematerialized trading system. What does that mean? That means most of the shareholders, right? If I am a shareholder in any listed company in Hong Kong, most likely when you go into the share register, you cannot find my name. I will be holding my shares through CCAS, well, actually through a broker, which is, you know, registered with CCAS, and that's it. And because of that, when the company has any important corporate actions they want to put to an AGM to vote, I don't even get any materials. I don't even get the shareholder circular because my brokers will be just sitting on it and not distributing to me. And chances are I've already signed a customer contract saying that, you know, I give up access to those, right? So as a result, a lot of these value-destroying decisions, for example, connected transactions, they are voted through because so long as those who are present and voting, a majority of that vote for those resolutions, they will be passed. So for most of the shareholders who didn't even know that there is such an AGM, and they never, you know, received the invitation to go, they just sit there and, you know, these bad things will happen to them. So another big problem in Hong Kong. The next one, a toothless tiger. What I mean, it's, you know, going back to the regulators, right? I did say earlier that, you know, maybe we can rely on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange or the SFC to help us a little bit. But you have to understand that actually they do not have a lot of power. For example, if you are talking about Hong Kong Stock Exchange, right? Let's see what's in their arsenal. They can privately reprimand a company or their directors. They can issue a public statement and criticize them. They can issue what is called a public censure, although I don't know how that differs from a public statement plus the criticism. I mean, it's sort of like slapping you and slapping you harder, maybe. They can report the case to the SFC and the CCB and other with bigger powers. They could issue something called the cold shoulder order, which is to tell the rest of the market, don't do business with this guy, he's a bad apple. And they can theoretically suspend a stock or delist the stock. But we don't like to do it at the exchange because if you do that, who actually gets punished? It's the investor, right? You know, I invested in this company and now my shares are, you know, evaporated, the value, because it's delisted, right? So you should be punishing the directors, not me. Oh, the last one is my favorite. Compulsory director training. We used to have these disciplinary hearings, and at the end of it, we'll say, okay, these directors are terrible. We must punish them. So how many hours of training should we make them sit through? Right, and usually it's about 24 hours. I actually have to give a lot of those trainings because, you know, I'm a lawyer, right? So usually when a director gets that penalty, they will call up a law firm and say, can you come over and give a training, right? And when I do, they're usually either dozing off or they're checking their BlackBerry, candy crushing. So not much the Hong Kong Stock Exchange can do, unfortunately. Now, I've painted a very grim picture. So far, nothing sounds good. Where's the market headed? I mean, is there actually any hope? Now, actually, the market is trying to do a lot of things to improve corporate governance. And over the years, right, on this page, you'll see a lot of initiatives which people worked on. You know, in 2007, for example, there was a consultation about quarterly reporting. The SFO in 2012, that was much improved to put statutory backing behind insider information disclosure, etc. A lot of initiatives. However, right, I would say all those initiatives, we did make some slight improvements, but a lot of them never made it to the finishing line. So, for example, statutory backing for the entire notifiable transaction chapter, that was stalled. Connected transaction, right? So if you breach a connected transaction rule as a listed company in Hong Kong, you did not actually breach the law. You breached rules, right? So the stock exchange can punish you by either public censure or public criticism. Blackout period extension, that did not go through. Quarterly reporting did not go through, right? Where Hong Kong is still doing just a biennial reporting for financial results. And then giving more powers of INED, we tried to do that, didn't happen. And of course, last year, we all know about the Alibaba incident when people are talking about whether or not to give weighted voting rights or dual-class shares to Hong Kong-listed company, and that debate didn't even start, right? Consultation was stopped before it actually went up. But there were some fine-tunings. So this page, you'll see things which actually happened. So, for example, Chapter 14A on connected transactions, we did make some improvements, for example, in terms of seeking auditors' confirmation for continuing connected transactions, etc. And then for the code requiring management to provide monthly updates, that sounds so basic, but we actually needed you to work to get it, work on it quite hard to get it. So that's basically where we are. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we had a number of fine-tunings, but not any major breakthrough. And we still have a lot of gaping holes. A lot of things are just not right. For example, we have general mandate, right? So each year, a listed company can issue as much as 20% of its total outstanding shares as new shares, so long as they issue it within a 20% discount, right? And that is dilutive to anyone else who holds shares in the company but is not given a right to participate in this new issue. And availability of class action, which I mentioned just now, these things are still not fixed. Unfortunately, I don't think we see a tangible, feasible timetable which these could be achieved. So, pretty sad. However, I would say people are more aware, at least. And sometimes I think the media is doing a lot of good work in this area. They report on corporate governance violations. And, when these things make it to the press, and you're running the company, you are the CEO, you are the chairman, you cannot just turn a blind eye. People are criticizing that your company has bad corporate governance. You have to react. So I think it's a good thing that there is the media and the public, watching over bad behavior and reporting it. At the end of the day, unless there is a real cost, well, I think a lot of people just would shrug their shoulders and say, whatever, right? Even if there's a bad article about me, I'm not going to change. However, if you tell these businessmen that their bad corporate governance is going to translate into real cost, that may make a difference. And this is where I think there is hope, right? A lot of very important investment funds, fund managers, private equity people, they've come out and say, look, we have adopted this policy and we will focus on putting our money only to companies with good corporate governance. So here you see these very important investors. They say, we are going to look at these companies and figure out if they have a good corporate governance. If they don't, we will not put money on it. We'll not buy their shares. So I think this is a good direction. And how about investors? There is a lot of study into investment decisions, responsible investment. I think a lot of these studies, the conclusion is that if you have a well-governed company, it's going to translate into better stock price. It will be reflected in a higher valuation. So over the years, you see more of these studies. This one in particular, quite interesting, the IFC survey. You see that, a lot of fund managers' decisions actually do take into consideration how good or bad the corporate governance of a company is. So a lot of firms would say, my firm would pay a premium of at least 10% or 20% for good corporate governance in these emerging market companies. So if the businessman is being told, look, focus on improving your good corporate governance because it's actually going to reflect in your stock price, and because you own shares in the company, you are going to benefit, that may change behavior. All right? So I think that's how it's headed towards the right direction. And you also have index company like Hang Seng Index. They compile corporate sustainability indexes, and the big fund managers will track these indices before they make investment decision. Lastly, on responsible investment, I talk about how changing behavior on the part of the issuer is important, on the regulators is important. However, there's also a concept called responsible ownership. You are the investor. You have made an investment decision to put your money on this company stock. You should also be responsible, right? You should do your homework and make sure that you play your part in correcting behavior. So the SFC actually earlier this year published 7 principles of responsible ownership, not binding. I mean, that's supposed to guide institutional investors to start with as to how they make their investment decision. So these are the 7 principles. For example, you should establish and report to your stakeholders, right? How you've discharged your ownership responsibility, monitor and engage your investee companies, etc. Clear policy on voting, right? If you're a fund manager, you better make sure that you attend meetings and vote your shares one way or the other, etc. So these principles, what are they here for? So if you are, someone with the money to invest, you should tell your stakeholders, right, whether or not you've adopted these principles and how you're implementing this. And the SFC is saying for those licensed entities, the MA, the Provident Fund Association, etc., these are statutory. They get money to invest because you guys are contributing to it. They should be the ones first to adopt these principles and report to their stakeholders how well or not so they're doing. This is how eventually market impact could be made. Times are changing, and I think companies need to be more mindful of their corporate governance because, it's on the positive side, it's going to translate into better share price. On the negative side, there are these shareholders, right? Even though there are toothless tigers, you may be hit by muddy waters, and that's going to do very long-term damage to your company. And the regulators are paying more attention. They are having even more powerful weapons in their arsenal. So ultimately, I would summarize it to basically it's a question of motivation, right? There's the carrot, which is better stock price and more long-term investor following. That's the stick, which is all these bad things, media reports, short sellers attack, regulators punishing you. That's the stick. So it's a question of motivation, right? If you get the balance right, then Hong Kong may have a chance to get to a state of better corporate governance. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.